Thank you for your patience over the last few years as we have planned this really complicated Star Trekian, sort of frontiers that we haven't really done before. We've had some amazing online conferences the last couple of years. We've had amazing face-to-face conferences. This is our first effort at trying to build a bridge between the two. And I'm really glad to see everyone here, both online and face-to-face. So welcome. I'm Supriya Bailey. I'm the conference chair for 2022, as well as CIES president-elect. It's a pleasure to be here with you all. I think it's important for introductions. This has been quite the journey the last couple of years. And I know one of the things we do at the very end of a conference is to thank people. For me, this is something that we have to do right at the start. We have to start off today and thank all the amazing people who made this happen, because this did not happen by itself. So before we get into our amazing first program, which we're really looking forward to, I want to start off by just expressing my deep gratitude to the countless people who helped make this possible, right? First of all, we have the most amazing staff at our Office of the Executive Director at CIES. Under Najib Shafiq's leadership, this group has been tireless. This is a small team handling membership issues, handling finance issues, handling registration issues. So thank you so very much to them and all the work that they have done. The second group, absolutely. The second group we have to thank here is Maestro Meetings. They are the people who have been helping us try to navigate this world. And they're also a nonprofit, so they're a small entity that are doing terrific work in terms of trying to put conferences together that are both unique, but also able to handle sort of the challenges of our time. So I want to really thank Mildred Cabrera and her team for everything that they have done as we put this together. We can up at the end if we want, but I know. And then we've got lots and lots of other people, right? This conference would not have been possible without the amazing group of faculty, scholars, advocates, activists from the Minnesota area. This group has been just amazing in terms of providing us ideas, leading us to people. We would not have this panel today without their diligence to sort of say, how are we going to represent Minnesota? How are we going to represent the state in this conference? Because one of the things about CIES, especially if we're on site, is to understand and to learn from the local community that we're around. And so we're really grateful to be able to have both the event on Thursday night, which is about leadership in schools and how they're handling this really crazy time that we're living in, as well as the event tonight. So really grateful for that. But it's also the leadership. Tomorrow evening, we're going to have a group of young people who write, create their own music, and they're going to celebrate sort of what it means to be a young person in this time here in this country, from all of sort of the diversity that they celebrate. And so we're really excited about the Visota group tomorrow evening. Wednesday evening, we're going to be going to the Minneapolis Institute of Arts. That is an evening for everybody. Buses will take us from here to there for an evening where you get to spend some time in one of the most beautiful museums in the area. And this would not have happened without sort of the support and help of some of the people that I've been able to meet on this journey. One of them, I don't know if he's here or not, but a gentleman by the name of Mark Ritchie. Don't know if he was able to make it. He is former Secretary of State of Minnesota, but also somebody who has a deep, deep love of this state and was able to sort of help us get access to some of these spaces. So want to really say a deep, thank you to him as well. Steering committee, CIES leaders, both those who have had titles and those who have not, have been amazingly helpful. I want to thank all the sponsors and what they have been doing here for us at CIES. And I want to thank everyone at George Mason University, which has been my home institution for as long as I've been an academic. And I want to say that I would not be able to do this without their support. CIES board, our steering committee, there's countless, this is not a job that one person can do. And so as I start this off over here, I know this is a long, long thank you, and I know we want to get on with the show, but I really want us to know, want this community to know that it is a small but mighty team that has put this together. And I hope that you all will recognize that as we go forward. So as we move on with the program, I think we've got all our technology. I'm basically stalling because, you know, we're trying to get the technology to work. Remember, we've got online people, we've got speakers, we've got, I think we're all set. So I'm going to transition to introduce Dr. Karen Brown at the University of Minnesota, who is the director of the Interdisciplinary Center for the Study of Global Change. This is a very small community. You know, paths recross and cross all the time. She and I were introduced a few years ago when a group of us were working on a proposal for the State Department, and it was a really collaborative effort. It was an amazing proposal. Didn't get funded, but you know, so goes life. But you know, kind of lost touch. And then she came back to support us. So the Interdisciplinary Center for the Study of Global Change is one of the reasons that we're having this panel today. And I want to take a minute to say thank you to them, but also introduce Karen Brown, who is the director of that center, where she directs a number of programs at the University of Minnesota. She also co-chairs the Masters of Developmental Practice in that university. And this is what happens when you're multitasking and you're not doing everything that you should be doing when you've been up since 5 a.m. But I want to just say that, you know, Karen has been at the University of Minnesota. She has studied there. She has come from Georgetown University. So she is also somebody who knows us in the Washington, D.C. area. She directs programs that work with the Mellon Scholars at the university, and she is somebody who has really been integral in putting this panel together. So I want to turn it over to Dr. Karen Brown and have her say a few words, and she's going to introduce the person who is going to be hosting the next session. So thank you all and welcome, and I will turn it over to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bailey, for your kind introduction. I'm really honored to be joining you today at this opening event of the Comparative and International Education Society's annual conference, a really remarkable global gathering. We at the Interdisciplinary Center for the Study of Global Change at the University of Minnesota are really pleased to be sponsoring this event, which fits so well with our focus on global social justice. Today's conversation is crucial to those of us working at the University of Minnesota, which is built on the traditional homelands of the Dakota people. And as a result, it is our responsibility to engage in an ongoing process of learning about relationships with land and among communities. And this event today offers us an opportunity for learning and dialogue with Indigenous educators. I am especially humbled to be introducing my colleague at the University of Minnesota, Dr. Elizabeth Sumida Waman, who will be facilitating the conversation that will follow. Dr. Sumida Waman is Huanca Quechua from the Mantaro Valley, Peru. She is Associate Professor of Comparative and International Development Education at the University of Minnesota, Twin Cities. And she studies the relationships between Indigenous lands, cultural practices, and in and out of school learning with Indigenous communities and tribal institutions in the Americas. Centering Indigenous knowledge systems, her work examines several major themes: the interfaces between modernity, exogenous and endogenous development and Indigenous places, Indigenous community-based educational design and generative environmental pedagogies, and Indigenous and comparative frameworks and practices of decolonial rights. As an Andean Indigenous scholar, her goal is to advance Quechua research methodologies and research design, and she writes about these processes in fellowship with other Indigenous research methodologists worldwide. I've had the honor of working with her on a number of projects, and I'm really delighted to be working with her on this event today. Please join me in welcoming her.
Ayanchu kashankichis tukujunakuna, nyaikuna, turaikuna. My name is Elizabeth Sumito Aman, and it is such a pleasure to be here in person with you all and to be joined by my dear friend, Darlene St. Clair, and to be joined by these amazing Indigenous scholars and thinkers. So I'd like to begin our time with the words of one of our panelists. In 1967, while taking a mandatory course in Minnesota history in 7th grade, Don Day, who is from the Leech Lake Band of Ojibwe, asked the teacher why he never mentioned American Indians in his lectures. The teacher told Don and the class that Indians did not contribute to the social, political, or cultural development of the state of Minnesota. Although Don knew the teacher was wrong, he did not have the courage to stand up to him. The cognitive dissonance Don felt that day many years ago still exists within many American Indian students' daily lives. Today, many American Indians are still struggling to exist in two worlds: the professional, fast-paced technological world of high finance and instant communication, and the traditional world of their ancestors, which involves native languages, sweat lodges, pipe ceremonies, spirit names, fasting, and other traditional customs. Although we have come far in our teacher training efforts, we still have far to go to better understand the Indigenous people of this country. Tribal nations called Minnesota home for many thousands of years before the arrival of Europeans to the region. To Indigenous people, the land on which they live and the communities of which they are a part have deep meaning. Home is more than a city or state of residence. It is the whole of place. It's lakes and woods, animals, sounds, spirits, and cycles. It is a sacred place of ancestors. This deeper meaning is why tribal people have such a deep and abiding veneration for this land many know as Turtle Island or North America. In this sacred land, all things are interrelated. All things are part of the great circle that is life. Those words, published by Tom Peacock and his co-author Don Day 22 years ago in an issue of Daedalus, the Journal of the American Academy of Arts and Sciences, reflect the layered realities of Indigenous lands and the peoples who continue to care for them today. On the one hand, the truths that are held in our daily and ceremonial engagements with place, and on the other, the attempted and successful erasures of those relationships through the physical structures that now mark up the land and the intellectual indoctrinations that instruct us that we are not who we think we are. When I was first approached by Cypria to assist in planning something that could be more than a conventional land recognition, which no matter how well-intentioned, still manages to center settler conscience, I sensed that she was interested in creating an opening to a conversation, to honor the possibility of dialogue beyond largely symbolic gestures by institutions, and to turn her back and ours as a professional society to the idea of place as mere site and the performativity of Indigenous people as subjects within the colonial imaginary. Within the last decade, the process of acknowledging lands and the peoples who belong to them has become commonplace. And as a Wonka and Quechua person, there is a part of me that is glad to hear the names of lands and peoples in their original languages. Those names are descriptive and striking, spoken in languages other than in English. Their utterances bring to life observations and interrelationships that interrupt the hegemony of one world thinking. I feel that maybe all beings of the land who remember what it was called perk up to listen, and that the earth itself receives the offerings of words. But Indigenous peoples know that sound bites are not enough. They are not the whole song, the whole prayer, the whole commitment of life to this relationship. Because we have protocols rooted in our knowledge systems for how to be in our own places and to arrive at and walk with the places of others, decontextualization presents a challenge because it divorces laws and governance from spirit. At this time, given that Indigenous peoples are pushing back on institutional platitudes and conference niceties, we have a chance to reflect on other ways forward, including how places speak for themselves and how we can learn to get good at listening. This evening, I am humbled to be joined by 5 Indigenous thinkers who are my teachers, each of whom have dedicated their entire lives to their own and other Indigenous peoples. To me, Darlene St. Clair, Tom Peacock, Manu Meyer, Lodun Hanyast, and Porter Swensel are of, within, and for their Indigenous knowledges. Their daily experiences and tough and beautiful work in community do not seek accolades beyond the relationships that they maintain with the places and people who have mattered to their families and community members for millennia. In this space, we hope to initiate several things with you. First, we wish to share our relationships with our places with each other and to inspire reconsideration of connections to the places that we and you may call home and wherever we may travel, including giving pause regarding what it means to arrive at Indigenous territories as travelers. We also aim to inspire the desire for deep understandings of land that make clear the significance of places, people, and more than human connections that are so needed to confront extraction, including the intellectual, material, health, economic consumption that dominates our interactions with each other and our earth. Our time together is aimed at kinship, familial, community-based, and personal understandings of our places, and how we put our places in conversation with each other, and how we are continually being shaped as interlocutors across our own and other Indigenous worlds. We are also interested in systemic shifts and institutional reckonings, and may propose possibilities for systemic changes that decenter settler narratives and guilt. Thus, while the machinations of coloniality are informative, our attention is on the healing of ourselves and our worlds. So I'd like to begin today by actually turning to Dr. St. Clair. And I don't read their bios because you can actually take a look at them on the conference website and take a little bit of a deeper glimpse at who these amazing people are. So I'd like to begin with Dr. St. Clair. Most who know me and my work know that I was trained by place-based educators. Among those whose work I hold in high esteem is Maori scholar Wally Penatito, who has asked, what is this place and what is my relationship to it? Which he argues are among other vital questions for all students. Darlene, as we begin with you, what is this place?
Hame takiapi, ampatukinde chante washte na pechuza pie, ye kiapi we de mieye washichu, ye Darlene St. Clair, e makiapie. Makoche kinde te unchindapi, dena makoche kinde Dakota. So I said, hello, my relatives. I'm greeting you with a good-hearted handshake. This is a typical Dakota formal greeting. I said, I'm Iyek Yapiwi. My Washichu name is Darlene St. Clair. And I said, to answer Elizabeth's question, this is a land that we cherish. This is Dakota Place. I think, though, to start with that, there's a very long and rich history of Dakota people in this place. It is our teachings that we were created as a people just a few miles down the Mississippi River at a place called Bedote, which is a confluence of 2 rivers, the Chachawakpa and the Minnesota Wakpa, the Minnesota River and what's called the Mississippi River. And at that confluence, we've been instructed that that's a place that the first Dakota man and first Dakota woman emerged out of the earth. So I live in not just my homelands, but I live in the place of my origin. My family is Mdewa Kantwa, the dwellers at the sacred, spiritual, or mysterious lake. Prior to being removed to a reservation in southwestern Minnesota, my family lived in a village called Kaposia, which is where in current Imanijaska or St. Paul. Today, this evening, we're in Bede Ota Otue, the village of many lakes. So we have like this long, deep, and complex history, and it gets complicated when Washichu and other folks came here, because then what happened is, on top of a place that's sacred and to Dakota people, a huge metropolis is built on top of the areas where we have some of our most sacred sites. And then things get complicated. And so some of the work that I've been doing in more recent times is trying to illuminate the long and ongoing Dakota interest in our homelands and in these special places, but also to recognize that non-native, non-Dakota folks and need to also be illuminated to those stories. So one of the projects that I've been working on is a 6th grade social studies curriculum that really was written for non-Dakota students. And this is a curriculum called Minnesota Makoche, the Dakota Homelands. And it's been implemented in schools around Minnesota, or around Minnesota Makoche, I should say, because Minnesota Makoche is the Dakota name for this region. It means the land where the waters reflect the skies. And for those of you who flew in, when you fly out of Minnesota Makoche and you look out the window, you'll see why that region has that name. Because we have so much water in this region that the land starts looking like the clouds because of the reflections. So I have taken on, as an educator, I've taken on a real commitment to not just examining and not just thinking about a Dakota interest in place, but also the necessity of sort of illuminating and sharing some of that worldview with non-Dakota people, so that educational spaces could maybe be more successful for Dakota people. That's one of my main sort of arguments.
Thank you so much, Darlene. So I'd like to bring in our panelists to have them introduce themselves in the way that they wish to all of you. So the way that you all are appearing, my dear friends, on the screen, I don't know if you can see or if it matches with what you have on your computers, but actually maybe we can begin from the bottom. We have 4 of our friends calling in here. So if we could please begin with the top. So it's Tom, and then Manu, and then Porter, and then Lodant.
So I guess I'll begin. Ani niji b'marazig many do know the indigenous cause Tom Peacock indigenous cause Jaganashamon Nindun Jaba Nagajawanang Nungum Misquabigan Minwa Onigamising Linda Makunindu Dame Nimanori Age Nimwenda Mama Yayan Nungum. I have to say that a couple of years ago, when I introduced myself to an audience, somebody in the back of the crowd said, "Speak American," and I said, "I'm the only one in this room speaking an American language," and that shut him up. So I will allow the others to introduce themselves. Thank you.
Alana kahi amoy lana mali a oya I o he I o kumu he I o lau he I o lono a ke aloha e ho o ulu mai e ho ulumai e ho ulua e kavelina a ke aloha Ake akamai, ake akamai. Ake akamai. Aloha mai ka koa pau o Manaleni o Luli Meyer ko uinoa ke one hanau o Oahu ma ka pai aina o Hawaii nui a kea. Ki noho nei I kia manawa o Kapolei ma mokupuni o Oahu. Aloha everyone. My name is Manu Ululi Meyer and I'm from the place of Mokapu on the island of Oahu and also Hilupaliku on the island of Hawaii. And Tom and everyone, thank you for that. And it's an honor to be here. Thank you for the invitation. Aloha mai.
Sengiti aki na nansa ginang joa kawe wiket o se naumo kap o winge weri naumo. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Porter Swenzel. I'm from Santa Clara Pueblo, which is one of the 6 Tewa speaking Pueblo nations in New Mexico. And as my fellow panelists said, it really is an honor to join you and be with you all this afternoon. Thank you.
Sego Swag, Lodant Neon Gets, Wageg Wahoni Wagita Loda, Oneote Aga, Niwago Honjot, Negid Negats Negwegune Huskan Hedun and Yawatni Guna. Egiskid wiga nene yochi ne wiga ka nene onwadu nene na watun dadi ne wiga ka nene jinis wabanoda ne jit nachte nene ne zwano ne ka nene ne watnisla de ne wiga ka nene jinis wabanoda se ne oni nene tonis wawana ne aga gweni nene ne hagwe gone skanako nene ne naiduna danyo hage. So hello everyone, my name is Laurent Hanius. I come from Onioteaga, or I am a citizen of the, I come from the Oneida Nation or Onioteaga Nation, people of the Standing Stone. And I am of the Wolf Clan. My family is Kanaka, which is the standing ears of corn. And so I just extend my greetings to everyone today. I hope everyone is in a good way. Yawa.
Thank you so much, friends, for introducing yourselves. So I'd like to turn to Lodant and Manu, but of course, anyone, please chime into the conversation. And I apologize if I'm kind of twisting around here. I have a back injury and so it's so awkward to like sit. But anyway, I'm absorbing the good energy. So the title of this conversation is Waiting at the Edge of the Forest, which comes from Onkwehón protocol. And Lodant and I have had some pretty extensive conversations about this, especially because I have been a traveler to many indigenous lands and really think a lot about what it means to arrive at the places of other people. And so I would like to turn this to Lodant to ask, what does it mean? What does waiting at the edge of the forest mean to you? And to all of our panelists, what does it mean to arrive somewhere in the proper fashion?
Thank you, Ellie. I'll do my best to explain the way we greet each other according to our protocols, the way it was explained to me by my teachers. And the way that I was told about these things was that a long time ago, that when we traveled to other nations within Turtle Island, that we always had a protocol that we followed, and that you just didn't show up at somebody's place unannounced. And so the way that my uncles, the way they explained this to me, is that the way that our ancestors, the way that they used to travel, it's different than the way that we travel today. And the way that we used to travel is that we used to travel by canoe. We used to travel along pathways through the woods, through the forests. And they would say that where the villages were of the people that we were going to greet, that there was usually wooded areas surrounding them to protect them. And so they would say that there was usually a clearing around the edge of the village. And for our people, for us Haudenosaunee people or Yunguanosaunee people, our villages were often palisaded, meaning that there was a protective wall surrounding the village to protect the elders, the women and the children, and all of the people that were residing within inside the village. And also there was usually like a maze that was constructed within that palisade. And they say that that was to help prevent people from coming and just entering the village and possibly threatening the people, the safety of the people that lived within that village. And so what we said is, what was told to me is that there was a protocol that was in place. And they said that if you were going to visit another village, if you were a runner carrying a message, carrying wampum to notify a village of an upcoming meeting or an upcoming ceremony, then what you would have to do is that you would have to come to the clearing at the edge of the woods. And then what you would have to do is that you would have to kindle a fire, a signal fire. And then what would happen was that there would be people, there would be runners that would be stationed along platforms at the top of the walls of the palisade. And they would look out and they would watch for smoke in the four directions from where our people could travel from. And that's what they would say, is that when they would see that smoke rising, that they would notify some of the other runners, and they would send runners out to go and see who had made that smoke, who had kindled that fire at the edge of the woods. And so they would send the runners out there to greet them. And that's what they would do, is they would ask them, you know, where they come from, what is their purpose, what are their names, who do they represent, what nation do they come from? Because all across this great turtle island, there were so many nations. They say there were over 500 nations that lived here on the back of the turtle here. And so the protocol would be for the visitors to say who they were, to say which nation they come from, to say their clan, and then to state their business, what kind of business that they had to visit this village, this particular people, and the nation of the people who lived at that village. And then what they would do is that they would sing them in. They would sing them in from that point of that fire that they had kindled. And then when the people inside the village would hear them singing, then that's what they would do, is that they would dance them into the village and bring them into the central fire located in the center of the village there. And the people would all gather and they would start preparing things to welcome their visitors. And then what they would say is that once the visitors had been brought in, that they would give them a place to sit. And they would also, the way that they described it in our language is they say ganaktuni. And what that means is that it means that they make a place for them. And it could also mean that they make a bed for them, so that they're giving them a place to rest. And so what they would do at that time is that they would greet each other. There were formal greetings, and they would give a Thanksgiving address within our language, where they would greet and honor all of creation and give thanks that the visitors, that they arrived safely and that there was nothing impeding them. And they said that they would even clean them off, that, you know, because of how they traveled, that maybe there were burrs covering them. So they would remove the burrs, they would remove the, you know, whatever kind of brush that they had picked up along their travels. And they said that they would even go as far as removing the thorns from their moccasins that might cause them discomfort. They would offer them water. One of the first things that they would do is to offer them water. And then they would ask them to state what kind of business it was that they had, allowing for the visitors to have a time to speak and state what it was, whatever their business was, what kind of message that they were bringing to the people at that village. And then after that, what they would do is what they would call Tehodinonsundakwa, which they call shaking hands, a shaking hands ceremony. Or we don't really say shaking hands, but it's more of a grasping or clasping of arms like this. And so that's the way that they would greet each other, is that they would hold on to each other's arm like that. And they would go through to each member of the delegation, and that's what they would do, is that they would link their arms together. And so what they would say, the people that lived there in the village, what they would say is they would say, from our chiefs and clan mothers, that we extend a greeting to your chiefs and clan mothers. And then from your ceremonial leaders, from our ceremonial leaders to your ceremonial leaders, that we also extend these greetings to you as well. And from our people that don't carry titles, ceremonial titles or titles of leadership, that the men and women, the people of the village, that they also extend their greetings to you as well. They say, that that's what they extend to you. That their best, kindest words, that's what they put together in extending this greeting to the visitors as they welcome them to their place. And they also say, from our children to your children, from the ones that's crawling around playing in the dirt, the ones that are running around playing, all the way to the ones that are on the cradle board yet, the newborn babies that are still on the cradle board, that they too, that they offer that. Those three things that they offer, their greetings, their best, kindest words, and their arm, they extend their arm to bring you into the village. And so that's what they would say. They would say that they would include all people that were there into the village, and they would extend those words. And that's what we say, that there is, with our people, that there was always three things that we would offer. And because they say that in the beginning, when our people were created, that the Creator breathed 3 times into our bodies to cause us to rise, to come to life. And so that's a brief description of the way that we understand that. And so it was as well that when European people started to come to our lands, we greeted them in a similar fashion, that we would greet them and welcome them and bring them into our lands, bring them into our territories, and welcome them as visitors. And so when Ellie and I when we were first talking about this, that's what we were saying, is that it has to be more than just an acknowledgement of land, because the people of that territory there, the Dakota people, they're still there. And that's what we have to be able to do as indigenous people, is that we have to remind people that this isn't just something that happened in the past, that today within our longhouse, within my community, we still follow this protocol when visitors come to our place. And we've had people come from all over the world. Not too long ago, we had the Dutch delegation, a delegation from Holland, come to renew the 1613 Two-Row Wampum Belt Treaty that was made with our people, the Haudenosaunee and the Dutch back at that time. So back in 2013, we had a delegation come, and we went through the same protocol with them at that time as I just described to you all today. And so that's a bit of the protocols that we have. And so we wanted to kind of include that understanding in today's gathering, today's conference, and remind people that we're still here, that we still practice our protocols. We still know what those things are, what the Creator gave to us in the beginning, in order for us to be able to welcome visitors into our place. And so with that, I'll pass it back on to one of my co-panelists, who will explain a little bit more as well around this matter. Donit.
Hui, aloha mai kākua pau. Lotan, that was very, very special. You just defined the song that I sang, asking permission. It's a type of kahea to thank all you alls for having my people here and for letting you know that the dream of our people of Hawaii is to combine and to synergize with this idea of illuminating the power of idealism. And I think what you just described, Lotan, is that ideal way of being that's no longer only the concern of Native peoples. It's now entering the center of our consciousness, and that is, how do we ritualize? How do we wait at the edge of the forest? And what's the quality of how we enter? You know, for us in Hawaii, our Hawaiians, you know, we kahea. The kahea is, you know, just yesterday, people kahea, you have to kahea into my home. We name our homes. And the kahea comes and I come out and I see who's there, like, oh, and then the oli responds, the oli como, you know, so the kahea tells of who the people are and why they're there and where they came from. And, oh, I just tear up. And then the oli como is, this is who's here. Please know that this is now your home. Please enter. But, you know, when I'm in the kahea, when I'm knocking on the door with my kahea, with my requests, while I wait at the edge of the forest, whether it's the real forest or the ocean or a classroom, where I'm asking for permission, we teach our students in our Hawaiian charter schools to ask for permission to enter. And so, you know, we so believe what your people, the people of the stone, what they ritualize, because it's that kind of quality. And of course, when that idealism isn't shared, that's where the breakdown occurs, when that mutual emergence isn't mutual. And they started saying, oh, Hawaiians just love giving us everything. That's where the breakdown really occurs. But we practice it now in our homes, in our schools. When I enter a forest, we wait for the signs. The welcoming doesn't always have to be in human form. It often is in other forms. We kahea in, we ask for permission to enter a forest. When we gather our la'au, our medicines, when we gather our lei making materials, when we gather our foods. And the kahea, you know, it's real. It's real. We know and we feel the simultaneity of life. And that is a discipline. And that is the power of best practices of a group of people specific to a place over time. And that's called culture. And I think that's what we're trying to illuminate in this conference, is a growing shared culture that includes all of us. We are not meant to exclude as Native people. Nope. We are now in the process of teaching ourselves these ways of healing again, so we can wait at the edge of the forest in good thoughts, in good patience, and in the request to come in a good energetic anticipation of how we will collaborate. And so we do it in our own languages and in our own ways. And I look forward to experiencing how we are all the same differently. Do you see that? And that is what I appreciate about your thoughts, Lotan. Thank you so much for sharing that. Thank you, Eli. I'll pass it on to you.
Thank you so much, Lodan and Manu. Porter, Tom, I'd like to give you the opportunity to respond as well. I think that we've had some really amazing points that have been made. You know, a lot of what's been explained by Lodan has been around nationhood, indigenous nationhood, and peoplehood and protocol. So we see that the business of arriving somewhere is incredibly serious, and serious for a reason. And then from Manu, there's a welcoming and an openness that all people can regain their own understandings of protocols, because there's also a personal responsibility as well. So I'd like to open it up to Porter And to Tom, if you'd like to contribute any comments as well.
I don't have much more to add that wasn't already said, and I really appreciate the emphasis on protocol, right? And what those protocols mean and how they center around a key word that is really critical from my perspective growing up, which is that word respect. And that word has such a rich meaning from my community and has many layers to it. And so that what are the protocols for laying down respect as you come to a new place, as you come to a new people? What are the kinds of protocols that we as indigenous peoples all around the world have created to ensure that we are entering into a space with the appropriate kinds of respect, right? And of course, those have many different layers of meaning that are specific to different peoples, but also I think it's important for I mean, there's many of you that are here at this meeting, this gathering this evening, and to reflect on protocol, to reflect on what is the role of protocol as you as people who are here at this conference, to reflect a bit on that as well. That's what I was thinking about. That's all I wanted to add to this.
Thank you, Porter. Tom, I might actually direct this next question to you, Tom. So this notion, and I'm trying to tie all of this together with regard to respect, permission, these kinds of themes, because I think what's also clear from what has been introduced is that for Indigenous peoples, it's not just about arriving to a different place, for example, and then demonstrating those protocols, but also the fact that we continually reintroduce ourselves to our own places and that we don't take for granted the privilege and the responsibility of what it means to be in our own places. And I think Manu had mentioned this as well, which I think is key, for us as Quechua people. What does it mean to enter one's farm field? And that takes protocol. You lay things down, you acknowledge the apus, you acknowledge the ancestors, you feed the earth. And those are things that take place. Those are like the knocking on the door. There's no door there, but there kind of is. So what does it mean then to knock on the door of your own places, to re-engage and continue to relationship with those places? And what are the types of values that you then carry with you, that you apply in terms of things that you can actually do when you arrive to a place like this, Minnesota Makoche? Manu has a beautiful philosophy, and sometimes I think some of the most profound philosophies are incredibly simply stated. And when we came together to talk about this program, Manu said, so what is our purpose? What is it that we do? And she said, love land, serve people. So I would like to ask then, what is the relationship between personal responsibility and land? What does it mean to love land, serve people? And how do you teach for that? So I'd like to begin with Tom.
I just want to maybe I want to begin by saying how privileged I am to be with this group this evening. Just wonderful, wonderful words. I thought I'd take a bit of a different tact with what how I'm going to respond, because and refer back to a little bit of the things that I've been writing about lately, the last few years, because it's all been about place and about our responsibility to place our where we are in relation to land, and so I'm going to read a short passage. I'll just kind of leave it at that, and to set it up, it had to do with me returning home. And it was in a book I did a few years ago called The Good Path. And I'm going to just go ahead and read it. And I'll just leave that with you. It has to do with our responsibility for our homeland and also for our homeland welcoming us, because it's a reciprocal kind of relationship. And here we go. Some years ago, I drove back from the East Coast with my younger brother. I'd lived away from my home community of Nagajawanang for nearly 2 decades. As we neared my community, I became apprehensive. I wonder what it would be like to live again in the land of my ancestors, remembered now only through my childhood eyes. Just as I wondered these things, there, spread out before me, was the blue expanse of Lake Superior. It embraced me like an Ojibwe grandmother, holding me and comforting my soul. And I said in barely, it was in the voice that resounded over the earth and sky of my childhood, I am home, I am home.
Beautiful. Tom is an amazing teacher. Everyone here has a story and teaches in different ways. Lodant and I have known each other for 20 years since I traveled to his Oneontaaka lands, where he has been a teacher at the Jinigwalihoda Log School, serving his community and participating in the community daily and ceremonial life. Porter and I have known each other through the Pueblo indigenous cohorts that I co-established at Arizona State University prior to coming to the University of Minnesota, and have the privilege of working with him and his relatives in Hapo Owinge, which is Santa Clara Pueblo. Manu's work, if you do not know it, please look at it. She is Konohiki. She is amazing with her ability to translate what is Kanaka Maoli epistemology, to write and to speak in a way that will move you and that will make you think about how you understand your own relationship to knowledge. Tom's work, particularly with More Than Humans and thinking about what it means to be a human person who is an interlocutor amongst different worlds, but who also holds power and responsibility. I also encourage you to take a look at his writing. I teach one of his books, A Wolf's Trail, in my class that I teach on ways of knowing here at the University of Minnesota, which is a beautiful story of the history of Ojibwe peoples told through the perspective of the Ma'ingan, or the wolf. I would like to ask this question of anyone who would like to respond. Porter, Manu, Tom, Lodant, Darlene. Indigenous lands are places of striking confluence. As we can see, many of us arrived here without necessarily protocol. Maybe we had our own way of thinking about what it means to kind of knock on the door of this place. Maybe we didn't. But there are places of striking confluences, very old, but also very new spaces and distinct worldviews and languages. How do you understand the transformation of land over time? And specifically, what hurts place and what heals place? And how do we as Indigenous peoples begin to heal, as Manu talks about in her work and in her speaking, collectively?
Maybe I can, I'll start, I guess. I think if I just go back to one of the conversations that that you and I had, Ellie, that when we were first talking about this idea of the protocols that we go through when we travel, when we visit to other parts of creation. One of the things that was shared with me by my uncles when I started to travel when I was a teenager, and we used to go all over. We traveled and we went to elders and youth gatherings all over Turtle Island. We'd been down to New Mexico. We'd been down to Gila River in Arizona. We've been down to the Seminoles down in Florida. We've been out to North Carolina. We've been to Oklahoma, out to California, British Columbia. Everywhere that we've gone, everywhere that our people have gone, and everywhere that people from our school have gone, and traveling to those places, one of the things that we were told was to bring our tobacco with us, which is our offering. And for most of our people, we all have something within our culture that we use as an offering, whether it's tobacco or whether it's corn flour or whatever that might be. That's what we were told from our community, was that whenever we go and whenever we travel, to those places, to those lands, is what I was told is the first thing that we do is that we look for the water. And a lot of the older people, they say that that's where our people always lived. Our people always lived along the water, because water is the primary source of life for our people. We need to have clean drinking water. We always needed to have a supply of water. There was usually always clay near the water, and we would use the clay. We would harvest it to make pottery to cook in, and so that was to feed our people. And so there was, this connection, this interconnectedness that we had with the land. And so what we were always told is, they said that whenever you go someplace, you go to the water and you take your offering, you take your tobacco or whatever it is that you have to make that offering, and you give thanks. So everywhere that we've traveled, if we've traveled out to the West Coast, to the Pacific Ocean, we've offered our tobacco to that water. And when we've gone, to down south, where water is rare, we also have taken our tobacco and made that offering. And down to Florida, where the Seminoles are, they've taken us to their places that are special to them, and we've offered our tobacco to those places as well. And out onto the East Coast, the Atlantic Ocean, we've offered our tobacco. And last year, I was also able to travel out to Minneapolis with a friend of mine to a gathering out there in the city last summer. And so I told them, I said, before we leave, I said, we have to go to the water. We have to go to the Mississippi. And with our teachings, that's what we were told as well, was that even though, you might think of New York State as being our homelands when you think of the Haudenosaunee, but we have a migration story as well. And our migration story tells us is that we originated, our people used to live along the Mississippi River as well in the Midwest. And so it was important, for me as well, that in traveling out there, that we went and we offered our tobacco to the river as well while we were there, and greeted that water and greeted the land and offered our tobacco and thanked the water and thanked the land for continuing to take care of our people, and asking it to continue to do so, in the days ahead. And so we felt that was an important thing, in our discussions around, this relationship that we have, and, in praying for the water. A lot of places, so many of our First Nations communities, indigenous communities, do not have clean drinking water. And so we have a responsibility, to be proactive in trying to restore clean drinking water for so many of our communities, but also to pray for that water, to pray for the land to be healthy, to continue to allow for us to plant our seeds and to grow our foods and to harvest those medicines that are out there. And so what we talked about is for the people that are out there at the conference, that maybe at some point, throughout the week, is that we can make time to take your offering and go out, to the river, to the Mississippi River, and make that offering, and to give thanks, to acknowledge the land, to acknowledge the waters, that they're still continuing to carry out their responsibility that was given to them in the beginning by the Creator. And so that was one of the things that we talked about in terms of how we acknowledge the land and the relationship that we have, and how the land takes care of us, how the water takes care of us, and the relationship that we have with the water. And that also we pray for the land, and we pray for the water, that they will become healthy again, and they will be able to continue to sustain our lives here as Onkwehón people, as Anishinaabe people, as Dakota people. And so I just wanted to share that with everybody that was there, that was a part of the discussions that we had originally when we were talking about this gathering. Danik.
Thank you, Lodan. And I would like to also turn to Darlene, whose work I think is really tremendous. It is big, important, beautiful, challenging work here in the state. These are her homelands. As described, this is the place of emergence of their first people. And Darlene has done some really amazing work around attempting to protect some of the sites that have been covered over, places that have been claimed by government or state entities, places that have been in many ways disregarded, and where Dakota erasure is quite prevalent. And so this being your homelands, and this being also a place of confluence, a place of difficult confluence, what is it that you would imagine or that you would envision for this place that goes beyond, for example, the symbolic email signatures, the declarations or the statements by university departments and different conferences? I think Lodan is referring, for example, to individual responsibility that can be taken up, that is symbolic, it's aesthetic, it's personal, but it's also in many ways really powerful spiritually, because you're offering something of yourself and of your life. You're also bringing to awareness the fact that these more than human beings also have their own agency and take care of this place, but that people also have a relationship and have stewarded and have watched over these things as well. But what does it mean to be at a place like the Twin Cities, which is and remains, not was, Dakota homelands, that is this place of confluence?
Well, it's a literal place of confluence, because we have these two major waterways that come to a confluence, what we call Badote in Dakota. And because of that, people that are from any part of this part of the United States would have traveled this. So Dakota people were accustomed to having people travel through, because these two major waterways cross through our homelands. I think when I think of what I'd like to see, and I'm trying to think about putting this in the context of the theme of this conference, when I think about idealism, we think of idealism as being something that is unattainable or naive people. Those are and idealism has sort of a negative connotation. But if in a Dakota context, I was trying to think of how would I understand idealism in a Dakota sort of worldview. And I think it is understanding your traditional teachings, your traditional instructions, and making a commitment to them. And I think in that commitment, because for Dakota people, we fully understand that we have traditional teachings, those original instructions, but we're human and we live into them imperfectly. So if we understand that we are going to live into them imperfectly, but we are going to strive, and we have a concept of ikchewi chasha or ikchewi, the common person, and we're taught that to become a common person, which is really to like live into your full humanity, that you struggle and strive to attain that. You don't just get born a common person, you have to work really generally your whole life to sort of reach your full humanity. So I think we do that. That's where I see idealism coming into play, because we, instead of seeing idealism as something that naive people do, or that there's no point in doing it because it cannot be reached, we think of idealism as a way to do self-reflection, a way to do dialogue, and a way to embody our commitments and the efforts that we make to become to live into our full humanity. And so I think I have traditional teachings of what that leads me to do. And I think about that in this place because I'm living in my homelands, and they're often shared. My guess is a lot of the things that I hold up as the way that I try to strive to be a full human is similar to my co-panelists and similar to you all in the audience. But I think some of it is doing that deep self-reflection to figure out, what do I stand for? And how do you struggle and strive towards that? And I think you can do that. Let's sort of change our thinking of idealism as idealism being that commitment. So if I see people coming into these homelands, I think thinking of those Oneida protocols, what I'm looking for is that people that are coming here are recognizing the sovereignty of the people of this place. That's part of the protocol, recognizing the ways that you do things, and then me recognizing your sovereignty. And I think it's those kinds of the recognition, and the other thing that even just the theme of this talk is like standing at the edge of the forest, that you're not coming in. You have to think about what your business is. That's what we were told. What is your business for being in this place? And I think we have to do some deep self-reflection, because we like to think that our business is all well-intentioned, but sometimes our business is to be a savior or a missionary. Sometimes our business is to extract. Sometimes our business is, it actually is harmful to the communities that you're visiting. So I've really thought about the conversation that we've had this evening and the theme of this conference. And I think it really does lead us to do that sort of both that work about what is our work and what's our business. And when we go to places that are not our own homelands, whether we're visitors or whether we're settling and staying in that place, we have to think about, what is my business in this place, and be honest about that. And we also have to think about, how am I recognizing the sovereignty of the people that are there, that are from that place? Because if we're not, that's the kind of actions that really chip away at our humanity.
Thank you, Darlene. I don't know where we are on time, but okay. Oh, good. Oh, we've got all night. All right. I would like to, in that vein, I would like to turn it to Porter, whose work is as a place-based educator, and who teaches traditional arts at the Institute of American Indian Arts, and who also lives in a place of deep confluence, one of the Pueblo nations that borders the Los Alamos National Labs. And so Porter, we're hearing a lot of themes about responsibility, nationhood, peoplehood, personhood, sovereignty that is both of nation, but also of the individual. A lot of your work focuses on re-emplacing. And I'm curious if you have any thoughts regarding what it means to reconsider our own relationships with our own places and with other places. What does it mean to re-emplace in the spirit of that question?
So I think of, we're at a conference that has participants from all over the world, and I'm speaking from my home at Santa Clara Pueblo, so I'm not there with you all. And so one of the things I think about, and I talk about with my students as well, is if we think about ourselves as human beings, regardless of our nation, right? We think of ourselves as creatures of the world, right? We're astoundingly unimpressive as creatures in many ways, right? And yet here we are at a conference where we're all very important, gathered, talking about important things and, you know, doing important stuff and all the important work we do. But, you know, when we think about it just as human being creatures, right? We're particularly unimpressive. You know, take a minute, you know, all of you that are here, you know, and check out your claws, right? You know, like how good are those compared to all the other creatures that have claws? You know, inspect your fur for a second, right? And see the coverage. And for some of us, it's even poorer than others, right? You know, when we think about our fur compared to other creatures, we think about our fangs, our teeth, right? And their ability to do their work, our eyesight and our sense of smell and our sense of hearing compared to other creatures in the world. Think about our top speed, even the fastest of us among the human beings, right? Pales in comparison to many other creatures in the world, right? So if we start to really get down to it and think about it, what makes us think we're all that? What makes us think that we can be at a conference and talk about important things and have important contributions on some level, right? And so I think a lot of this is also incorporated into many indigenous teachings around the world as a reminder that us as human beings, we exist purely on the munificence of all that surrounds us, of the places that we live at, you know, without all the other creatures and all the things that come from the places that we live at, we don't exist, you know, because of our poor fur and our thin hide, right? We have these clothes that we have to make out of things, you know, we have to dig around for food, you know. We even think about human beings, little human beings, babies, right? If you ever see any baby of any other creature, right, you see like, I don't know, a baby duck being born, you know, and a couple of days after that, they're doing duck things, right? They're walking around and swimming and, you know, doing duck things, right? How long does it take for a baby human to start doing human things? It takes like years before they're off doing, you know, they're off to survive on their own, you know, and some of us still have like, you know, people who are 18, 20, they're still living with us, you know, because we have to take care of them, you know, that's human being troubles, right? And regardless of what nation that we come from, all us as creatures have this same experience. And yet we also have this situation where we begin to think a whole lot about who we are. We start to build up this level of importance that far exceeds, in my opinion anyway, and thinking as a human being, far exceeds who we are as creatures, right? And to think about how is it that we return back the favor for all that the places that we live at have given us. We exist purely on the you know, giving of all of that, right? But do we practice those protocols of respect to have those things come into our lives, right? And when we place ourselves, are we simply you know, taking from the place that we're at, or what kind of deep and intimate relationship are we entering into that place? What levels of thankfulness and respect do we give? You know, a lot of the protocols that have been discussed tonight also are very nation specific. So going to Darlene's comment about recognizing the sovereignty of nations and recognizing that there are certain protocols that are distinctive to those nations and make those nations special in the particular ways of laying down respect, of giving that respect for that particular place, right? But all of us as human beings have also need a reminder every now and then of, you know, what is it that makes us, you know, we're particularly, you know, dedicated to all those things around us that even allow us to exist, you know, and regardless of where we come from, we have to be mindful and think about that element. So that's what this conversation is also bringing up to me, you know, and as all of the attendees here coming from all over the world, right? I live in a high desert environment where the sun rises and sets on mountains, you know, where we're thinking about planting our corn at this particular time, you know, and cleaning our ditches and things like that. And, you know, the kinds of things are particular to our place. I have no idea what it means to live in somewhere else, you know, that where the environment is so different. But I do know that we share the same experience as human beings of relying on all that surrounds us for our existence. So those are kind of my thoughts at this moment.
Thank you, Porter. So with our final few minutes, I'll open this question to all of the panelists, but I would like to begin with Tom and with Manu. Tom and Manu, many younger Indigenous scholars are standing on your shoulders, trying to see the world, trying to understand our place in the world and looking to your work. And so I would like to open this question and invite you to respond. You know, we see a lot of gestures by institutions. We see a lot of statements that do have some material rectifications. You know, in Canada, I know where Lodun is, there's a lot of talk around reconciliation. There are inquiries that are being made, a lot of searches for justice and so forth. So this is not to say that land recognitions, people recognitions, truth and reconciliation processes are not effective and that they don't produce things. But I do think that what we are hearing tonight is something a little bit different. I think that we're hearing that Indigenous peoples who are immersed in their own places and really rooted in their own knowledge systems, yet who are open to exchange and actually invite that kind of exchange, are really thinking about the things that aren't necessarily co-optable by states, but things that we do within our communities, within our families, within the schools that we create and so forth. And so to open this question to you all as the final question, which is really, what is your dream for your places and your peoples?
I think I'm again going to go back to something from what I've been writing, and because I think it explains it best. I think you know, we can get so easily caught up into how important we look, you know, in the external world. We get caught up with our degrees, which, you know, when I go back home, you know, to my community, all the degrees that I've ever had are meaningless. You know, they mean nothing. It all goes back to the way that I think and the way that I'm perceived. It all goes back to the fundamental act of, you know, being kind, to humility, you know, to those things. And so, you know, I just came from the Minnesota Indian Education Conference, and there was a time, you know, when I was very active in that kind of thing, you know, many years ago, and to go now in a different capacity and see young people, you know, engaging and, you know, trying to change the world the way that, you know, I've been trying to change the world for the better for nearly a generation now, was very enlightening, actually, and I was very, very impressed with that young generation, you know, who are you know, fighting like the people, you know, in my generation. So I think what I'd like to do is I'd like to close with something that I wrote a few years ago, because it really speaks to our place. And I apologize for the crinkling of paper. But for some reason, non-native society really likes things written. I have no idea why. but here we go. All of creation walks the four hills of life. Everything forms a circle. Stars begin as specks of dust, grow, twinkle, and eventually lapse into darkness. What remains of them is gathered by the great laws of nature and formed into stars again. The circle of things continues. Daybreak begins. The sun rises and travels across the horizon and sets. Moonlight appears and fades. Daybreak begins again. The circle of things continues. Plants push their way through the earth and reach toward the sun. They seed and wither with the seasons and lay down on the earth to die. New plants grow from the seed. The circle of things continues. Animals give birth while the old and injured and sick among them end their earthly existence. A fawn is born and died, fathers new young or becomes a mother to fawns. The circle of things continues. Everything in creation walks this path. The path forms a great circle, and within it are many circles within circles. One circle is our own. Other circles hold everything else that exists before and after us. Every circle within the great circle joins in a great symphony. Everything in creation, plants, animals, humans, become the music's performers. Wispy clouds, thunder, sunlight, fish, chattering birds, eagles, chanting dancers, children, elders. The drum sounds the heartbeat of our earth. The song is life, and the creator is the maestro.
Me, great Shnibawa, Tom. Beautiful.
Mahalo, Tom. That is so special to hear your thoughts. You see how enduring and ideas that circle around the love of land actually continue. It just gets better with age. Never gets, doesn't have a Twinkie shelf life. I just want to say, Eli, that my dreams for my people and the place that is known as paradise and known as one of the most expensive places to live in the world, taken from us by America, 1893. I think we share very, very similar dreams for place and people. And I want to just kind of highlight how we connect. And Porter, I loved it. We are astoundingly unimpressive. You know, we don't have fur, but you know, we've got the kind skin that makes surfing possible. So we got the kind that knowledge that allows us to really enjoy snow, even on Mauna Kea, and the beauty of that, of the elemental forms that we see there and we cultivate in our hearts. But I love how we are healing in Hawaii is doing exactly what you're doing. That what are the protocols for laying down respect? What are the protocols? All we got to do, everybody, is figure them out together and then really mean it. And then really mean it. Because Darlene, oh, so clear. The Dakota people, we're lucky that you're there. Because how do we live into our principles? How do we embody our teachings? That is exactly what we're trying to do. That is exactly what we believe about when we talk about effulgent coherence. You know, I gotta use all these high mucky terms, Tom, so people think I know something. But it's just this energy of, are you a woman of your word? Are you a man of your intention? And the embodiment of our teachings, Darlene, then begins to ask, what are your teachings, everybody? What are the principles that have endured for a reason? And that's the idealism. It is so true. Idealism in my history was very negative. You know, I'd be speaking and someone say, well, you're just an idealist. And I'd sit down kind of bummed, like, oh, I'm just an idealist. Like, what does that mean? Is that what? Does it mean I'm naive? Does it mean I'm so positive? It's out of the realm of practicality? No, it means I come from a culture. I come from a culture that prioritizes respect, that prioritizes the embodiment of our principles. And so I want to say that, Lotan, when you said that gratitude is the energy that will help us, we have been singing our Oli Mahalo, our song of gratitude now for over 20 years. It was developed, and when they sang it to me first about 21 years ago, I just cried and cried and cried. All these Kolohe kids, these naughty teenagers, jumped up after I gave a speech and they sang this song of gratitude, and they meant it. They meant it. And when you mean your gratitude, you are laying down the protocols of respect, and you are beginning to embody what Thomas is saying and feeling when he asks the questions, what is our responsibility to place? And then he shared with us that his place is his grandmother, and how beautiful that was. I am home, I am home. And so to get us to have a relationship again with our place is like learning to love again. The grandparents that might have been, that we love. And so ku'u aina aloha. We're reintroducing an old word for land, ku'u aina aloha. It means our beloved lands that have always loved us. We had to turn it the opposite about 110, 20 years ago to aloha aina. Love land. But now we're so busy, defending justice, equity, we've forgotten that the land has always loved us. So the land, ku'u aina aloha, the beloved land that has always loved us. We are heading back, Eli, into a deeper relationship with our winds, our rains, our ho'ailona, our portents of change and transformation, our lightning, our moon. We have a relationship, the moon's cycles nowadays, and we do things based on the moon. I mean, like, duh. So how do we collectively heal? We figure this thing out together by embodying our principles. So don't stand on my shoulders, you other scholars. Come on. Stand within the teachings of your own heart. And it's an inward expansion. It always has been, always will. So maukelo no Hawaii, always love the place you're in, and then develop that respect, honor, and care for that place. And that place will become you, your family, and all the people that will extend from you for generations to come. So be a good ancestor, everybody. Don't quote me. Be your own quotation. Be the quotation you wish to write in the world. Mahalo.
Porter, Lodan, any thoughts? Dreams for your people, dreams for your places?
I think I just wanted to say that I'm really happy that you have Darlene there as well today, because again, when we were first talking about the edge of the woods or the edge of the forest and what does that mean, and the things of what I shared this evening or this afternoon is just the perspective from my people. And I just want to be clear on that, because if there are people from all over the world that are there today, that not to think that this is, the perspective of all nations, across Turtle Island, that what I shared this afternoon, this evening, is just the way that we were told is Oneoteaga people. And so when Ellie and I, when we were first talking about this, the protocols that we have and going beyond just, the typical land acknowledgement, was to really go back to how did we welcome visitors into our territories. And so that's what I was sharing my thoughts around this with Ellie. And I said, it's really important to have somebody from there, a Dakota person from there to be a part of this, because the way that they do that, within their nation, it might be different than the way that we do it as Onioteaga people. And so I'm glad that she talked about that, that whole idea of sovereignty, because even within our confederacy, within the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, we have 5 nations originally. Now we have 6 nations, but even within our own longhouses, that we have differences in the way that we do things. And that is a part of our protocols, even within our confederacy, is that it's not the place of the Mohawks to go to the Oneidas and tell the Oneidas how to do things, that the Oneidas, that we already have our way of doing things. And it's not for the Oneidas to go to the Onondagas and tell the Onondagas how to do things, because the Onondagas already have their way of doing things. And it's not for the Onondagas to go to the Cayugas, or the Cayugas to go to the Senecas, for us to try and tell each other how to do things when we were already given those instructions on how we relate to each other. And so even though they're all rooted, around the same ideas, there are differences that we have within our nations, within our confederacy. And so I just wanted to acknowledge that as well, that, to have Darlene there, I felt that was a really important thing, for this gathering, for this conference over the next few days, that it's the people from there that are the ones that are really welcoming the people there, to their place. And so, she mentioned that a little while ago about the sovereignty and the way that they do things, and that we have to do that. And as visitors, when we travel, that's what we do, is that we say that we give you our bundle. And it's almost like to say that we are in your care. So we surrender ourselves to you. So whatever it is that you want to do, engage us, with during that time that we're with you. It's almost like, we're in your hands. And so whatever it is, that you decide what it is, what we're going to do, then that's your responsibility to advise us and to let us know how we're going to navigate and how we're going to move while we're in your space. And so that's kind of what it goes back to, is that whole idea of having that respect, while we're in somebody else's place, somebody else's territory. And so I'm glad that she's there today to help to welcome, everybody that's here or there, I guess, for this gathering. So that's just my final thoughts that I wanted to share with everybody this afternoon, this evening. Yawa, thank you.
I would just add, I am very happy to have been part of this panel, and I'm just struck with all the beautiful things that have been said, and profound statements, that you open your heart and open your mind and take some of these things in, and they're lessons that and instructions that echoes through time, right? And so that in many ways, us as peoples, human beings, it's never been a question of ingenuity. Look at us meeting on these machines and, in different spaces and across time zones and everything else, these are the kinds of things that we do. But in a stronger sense, it's always been a question of principles, right? And perhaps that's the struggle that not only we are faced with at this time, but those who have come before us, they also face these challenges. Every generation, what does it mean to strive to maintain our principles, to regenerate and reinvigorate our dedication to being grateful to the places and the peoples that have come before us, and to be respectful of those places and respectful of others, right? And so in essence, the challenge that we face now is really no different than those faced by those who have come before us, who also were challenged with remembering to carry on those protocols of respect and remembering to carry on those protocols of gratitude And love, that word that Manu brought up, you know, what does it mean to love our land and remember that our land loves us, right? So that I think is some beautiful words to take into heart. And thank you all for sharing that.
Well, thank you so much, Porter, Manu, Tom, Lodant, and Darlene. And I think we've heard some teachings. That's always a privilege. We've heard some stories, which is always comforting and hopefully sort of open your heart and awaken your thinking. We've also heard some words of caution, a lot around the fact that we are very mobile, but to not confuse free choice or free will in a way that really tramples on the liberation and the freedom of others, but that there is respect that we need to define based on our own, as Porter was mentioning, based on our own principles and our own values and our own languages and what those things mean. So we thank you very much for your time, for being with us in this place. Please look around, look up, look down, look at each other, look within over the next few days. And as we are grateful, we wish that you also cultivate that gratitude as you go about your time here in Minnesota Makoche. Urbiai sonkoyai, sumakianya to everyone. Thank you so much. Thank you, friends.
Thank you.
I just want to express our deep gratitude. And I think those three words today that we've walked away with, the gratitude, welcome, and home, are going to resonate with all of us. If you can just express one more time your gratitude in whatever way possible to this amazing panel, please do so. Please. Thank you. Thank you so much.